Welcome to your Wellspring Wednesday. My name is Sara, a certified trauma recovery coach with Full Circle Wellspring. There is no one-size-fits-all healing process designed for trauma survivors. The truth is, each of us has to individually tap into our inner wellspring to find a regimen that works. These episodes are dedicated to finding, exploring, and using those inner resources that I believe all survivors have in order to live their best healed life. Let's get started. Know better, do better. Today's title comes from one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Maya Angelou. The whole quote says, "Do the best you can. When you know better, do better." I love the perfect balance of appropriate blame with personal responsibilities. It's one of my life mottos, and I'd like to take a few minutes to share how I find this to relate to trauma recovery. What I meant by appropriate blame mixed with personal responsibility is really simple. So often, trauma survivors of childhood abuse or developmental trauma specifically, they blame themselves for being bad. They carry undue shame and feeling like a burden to life itself. The reason for this is also simple. You see, in developmental trauma, a young brain is trying to rationalize why it's being abused, hurt, neglected, yelled at, called names, sexually assaulted, manipulated, etc. The brain can reason between two choices. Either my caregivers are bad or I am bad. In this quest for logic in a very illogical situation, a child has to choose the I am bad logic simply out of safety. If a child determines that their caregiver is bad, that will unearth even more dangers, problems, and possibly life-threatening harm to the child. They must decide that they are the bad one, and they somehow deserve the treatment they are receiving. And that, my friends, is the best the child can do. It doesn't have the reasoning faculties to do much more beyond that point. Who would sit here and blame a child for feeling that way when the alternative of them being in the care of an evil parent is even more disruptive and harmful? However, since then, you've grown. You've learned about yourself. You're even on a self-exploratory path right now just by listening to this or reading this. You've somehow found yourself on a trauma recovery journey. And in that, you are discovering that you're inherently good. The truth of that means that you're realizing that you did not have good enough parents like we spoke on weeks ago. And that's where the grief comes in as you mourn for the world you grew up in. This also means that you have not just a right to do better, but a responsibility to do it. Now, wait, all you perfectionists out there, myself included, sit back down. I know you already got up and grabbed a pen and a paper to start writing down all the ways you have to do better. Or worse yet, you're already grabbing the car keys to take off to start all your wonderful do bettering. Okay, calm down. Let's just breathe. Hear me out. I'm not saying that with every tiny bit of new wisdom you hear or read or are told from your therapist or coach that you have to immediately spring into implementing changes. Trust me. Something huge, like finally realizing why you binge drink or recognizing your intimacy issues, doesn't automatically solve your behavior and fix you. What I mean is more that you have a responsibility to pursuing your healing. Like in the United States, we don't have a right to happiness, but the pursuit of it. Here, I think you have the responsibility to give yourself the chance to do better going forward in your future. Once you start learning the truth about your trauma and you come to terms with your abuse, once you flesh out the lies that you were told to believe about yourself and you start some self-inquiry, which you can feel free to check out last week's guided meditation to ignite some of that self-inquiry. But once you do that, you are then able to make the next best steps based on the new info that you've gathered. If you don't have the resources, time, energy, or wisdom to know exactly what to do and how to do something, you can still choose to pursue those answers to determine which way to start moving. This also highlights another issue we survivors need to work out, which is where to place appropriate blame for what did happen to you back then. Just like you wouldn't fault the child for self-abandoning and self-blaming when they didn't know what else to do, you can recognize that now and start figuring out who and what is to blame for the traumas that you endured. Once you're able to unburden yourself of that and forgive yourself, you can start the real healing. You didn't know anything else but your trauma world, and now you do. So you can shift your pain into the right person and give yourself appropriate levels of self-responsibility going forward. You can keep listening to this podcast, keep showing up for yourself, start a trauma recovery coaching relationship, read the books, do the work, press on and push forward. You do not have to do this in a drill sergeant way. In fact, you mustn't. You do this with self-compassion, kindness, gentleness, forgiveness, grace, and perseverance. Remember, this is a journey. As I've said, it's a long and arduous one at times. But now you know, so you can now do. And as you learn, you can heal. And as you make small steps, you can grow. If you need coaching support as you come to these realizations, feel free to send me a message on the Connect tab of my website below, or schedule a 20-minute free consultation to decide if coaching is right for you. Always do your best with what you can at the time, with what you know, with what you have, and who you are. And then, once you know better, you can make the changes and do better. You got this. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Trauma Survivorhood. This has been written and created by your host, Sara, a trauma recovery coach. For more info about me, trauma recovery resources, or to check out our support groups, classes, free survivor circles, private coaching, and more, visit www.fullcirclewellspring.com. Schedule a complimentary 20-minute discovery call to see if coaching is right for you. For the latest info on schedules and updates, follow us on Facebook at Full Circle Wellspring. All other media, social links, blogs, and show notes are posted in the episode guide below. Until next time, be well, survivors.